Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another live stream, and thank you so much for tuning in for another show. Tonight, we're going to talk about the latest revelations coming from an American mercenary who spoke about the details of the operations of the GHF or Gaza Humanitarian Foundation that was recently formed and suspiciously funded as well in Gaza, including killing and shooting innocent civilians. I posted a video earlier on about the progress in relation to the ceasefire, and I'm also going to talk about the latest acceptance or reported acceptance of Hamas to the ceasefire. We're going to go and read through that and see what that means as well. And we'll hopefully have a Q&A session as well towards the following part of this live stream. Now, we're going to begin with the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. Now, as you may be aware, for the past several months and after a long starvation campaign by Israel, a foundation that is called the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation started to operate inside of the Gaza Strip to distribute aid. And we have seen many scenes of people being shot and killed by the Israeli terror forces inside of the Gaza Strip when they're looking for aid in what is looking more like a concentration camp and an image of a draconian and dystopian reality inside of the Gaza Strip that is being forced upon the population, not only by Israel, but by the United States as well, in what is appearing to be very, very carefully calculated way and an engineered situation where the Israelis are pushing the Palestinian people towards a miserable reality where people have to go on the ground to search for food, people getting killed, looking for aid. Not the first time, of course, that Israel did that. They do that regularly, killing people for fun. Carefully engineered campaign to humiliate the Palestinian people and show the desperation of the Palestinian people suffering under this terror entity inside of the Gaza Strip. We're going to talk about that in more detail in this live stream, especially with the latest revelation. Now, this foundation is formed by American mercenaries, getting anywhere between $5,000 to $10,000 a month. Some of them are ex-armed forces. The previous CEO of this organization resigned because of political affiliations, according to him, or politically motivated moves. Now, of course, it wouldn't have been formed without an Israeli approval. This is directly coordinated between the United States and Israel. And also many international organizations had many concerns about this organization itself and how it operates and how it doesn't really preserve human dignity. It doesn't abide by international law, doesn't follow international humanitarian law, and it also uses the starvation and the aid as a political and military tool. As a matter of fact, these were some of the reasons that Jake Wood, one of the main founders and the head of this organization, these were some of the reasons that he spoke about before he resigned from this organization. But what we're going to talk about is, you can call him an undercover or a mole, because clearly there are some people there who are fundamentalists backed by the United States administration. In case you're not aware, the United States administration is run by fundamentalist Christian Zionists. The Secretary of Defense wrote a book called An American Crusade, slogans and stuff. Huckabee, the ambassador to Israel, is a previous televangelist. Mike Huckabee, we don't need to talk about Mike Huckabee. And Donald Trump himself always tried to be very appealing to the evangelical Zionists inside of the United States. So there is that element. So they're getting support from the administration. However, saying that, there are clearly some people in this administration or in this humanitarian foundation inside of the Gaza Strip who aren't very pleased by what's happening. Now, so far, the reports of killings and the reports of massacres were always related to Israel when people were going to seek aid in these dystopian scenes that we see in Gaza. But now it appears to be that the Americans are participating in this genocide too, and they are directly shooting and killing Palestinian people with a license to kill, according to this man who remained anonymous after he spoke with the Associated Press in relation to the situation inside of the Gaza Strip. There was this report here in the website Politico, based on reports that came and a statement that came from one of the contractors inside of the Gaza Strip. American contractors guarding aid distribution sites in Gaza are using live ammunition and stun grenades as hungry Palestinians scramble for food, according to accounts and videos obtained by the Associated Press. Now, in one of the videos that they posted, they showed the man taking a video of his colleagues, and one of them was saying, you know, in short, we don't want to use excessive force, while the other one was hearing live gunshots and saying, hell yeah, for the American forces shooting at Palestinian people. And this man or group of people came forward because they were disturbed, according to them, by what they considered dangerous and irresponsible practices. One of the alarming things that they mentioned was that the fact that the staff hired by the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation were often unqualified, unvetted, heavily armed, and seemed to have an open license to do whatever they wished. They said their colleagues regularly lobbed stun grenades and pepper spray in the direction of Palestinians. One contractor said bullets were fired in all directions, in the air, into the ground, and at times toward the Palestinians, recalling at least one instance where he thought someone had been hit. Now, you can imagine the numbers of tens of thousands of people walking for tens of kilometers and in some points starving and thirsty. Many of them die on the way. Many of them get killed on the way and on the way back too. Go and try and find out who has been killed and who hasn't been killed. He said that the staff who monitor shoot at everyone who they considered suspicious. And of course, they share live information with the Israeli army. But they clearly don't have any guidelines to say when you can open fire and when you can shoot. So clearly, these people are going there with a shoot-to-kill policy, or with an open license to kill people and do whatever they want. There were also more statements from these people about the fact that not only Israel directly monitoring what's happening, but the fact that this group is controlled or directly in communication with the unit in the borders with the Gaza Strip in the Kerem Shalom or Karm Abu Salim area. Now, this is a direct admission for the first time coming from someone within the organization that the United States is actively participating in the genocide and killing Palestinian people with boots on ground. But instead of it being the American army, it's a group of armed thugs, armed criminals, militias operating under the slogan of humanitarian aid. Firstly, they have concentration camps They deliberately disabled any dignified humanitarian aid going inside of the Gaza Strip. Now, we're not going to get into who caused this, you know, inhumane situation anyway. But at least when it comes to the actual aid, people deserve to get aid in a humane manner. Israel cut all of the organizations that used to supply people regularly, primarily the UNRWA, an organization that was founded after the establishment of the Zionist entity to support Palestinian refugees in Gaza, the West Bank, East Jerusalem, Jordan, Syria, and Lebanon. And the Palestinians were relying heavily on these organizations. Israel deliberately targeted these organizations so that the people cannot get any aid in a dignified way. Instead, we have concentration camps where people are gathered together surrounded by metal cages, being shot at, not only by Israel, but by the people giving the aid. Since when did aid workers have guns with them to shoot at people? What kind of aid is that exactly? Or is this the new aid that, we're meant to accept? This is a carefully engineered mechanism to further degrade the Palestinian life, and that shows no regard to the Palestinian life, and deliberately is there to humiliate the Palestinian people. And now, by these confirmations, clearly the Americans are participating too, backed by the fundamentalist Christian Zionists running America. They talk about, religious fanaticism and fundamentalism and separating religion from state. Go have a look at the Trump administration and all of the people in the Trump administration. And some of these people are clearly getting a backing from them and probably, implementing their beliefs against the Palestinian people in coordination with Israel. Thankfully, some of them have better intentions than others. That's why some of the American operatives in this organization are now revealing the atrocities. Now, although they don't come even close to the Israeli atrocities inside of the Gaza Strip, but nevertheless, these are atrocities. These are crimes against humanity. A humanitarian foundation that is very ambiguous, very suspicious, no clear sources of funding, based in Delaware in the United States, then formed in Geneva to show some sort of independence, direct ties to the military-industrial complex, in coordination with Israel. Everything is shady, nothing is very clear, and we're supposed to accept that as some sort of a reality. That was the first thing that I wanted to talk to you about. The second thing that I wanted to talk to you about is, well, there have been reports now that Hamas accepted a ceasefire. Now, mind you, these reports are from Israel, but these reports are very, very recent, and more things are about to come out very shortly. And of course, some things need to be verified directly, and nothing can be verified in full unless we have a statement either coming from Hamas directly or from an official inside of Hamas. So I'm going to share some of the reports that are coming out just now with you, and also talk about the prospect of something happening, or if this is again going to be a very similar to situation to what happened previously in relation to the ceasefire. This was the report that just came in from Israel. Hamas responded positively to the deal. Small cabinet convenes in Israel to talk about this. Now, when the small cabinet convenes in Israel, that means there's something very serious to talk about. Donald Trump is expecting, of course, Benjamin Netanyahu to arrive to the United States soon, and he probably wants Benjamin Netanyahu to come with an approval of a ceasefire. Now, regardless of the position of Donald Trump, we're talking about a man who has called at least several times to a ceasefire. And he wanted Benjamin Netanyahu to accept this ceasefire. He cut ties with him in certain occasions because he did not actually listen to him or, accept the fact that he wants a ceasefire. According to this report here in the Israeli Ynet, they're saying that channels that are connected with Hamas are speaking about the fact that Hamas accepted a ceasefire. Hamas responded positively to the new proposal. Then the small cabinet of Israel are meeting. Amidst all of that, Israel is considering either we continue with the operation in Gaza or finishing the operation in Gaza through what they're calling an all-out deal in the region. Or another option, another temporary deal. According to this report too, and again, we still don't have verified sources from the Palestinian side, sources close to Hamas said that they will be giving a positive response to the deal that is being pushed now by the United States, or the amended proposal that came from Steve Witkoff. However, what we need to know is the recent proposals or the recent talks and reports spoke about actually reaching a deal with top figures from above, not necessarily directly dealing with the ceasefire itself, ordering that deal. Previously, so earlier on today, senior figures in the Israeli cabinet who spoke with Benjamin Netanyahu said that he really wants to reach a deal and he is very keen on reaching a deal almost at any price. And he believes that the window of opportunity that Israel is positioned at the moment happens once in a generation. According to them, within closed doors or between closed doors, the prime minister is saying that we have very rare and even imaginary options now. And according to them and to their understanding, Netanyahu is now looking to get to a deal that will eventually lead to an ending of the war, and Israel will not be returning to a war inside of the Gaza Strip, with the release of all of the Israeli prisoners of war together. Talks about demolishing, or not demolishing even, collapsing the Hamas. And now, by the way, the Israeli military spokesperson, he had a statement earlier on where he started to speak about taking down the Hamas governance of Gaza. So notice what we started with and what we ended up with. Eliminating Hamas, as if, we wipe Hamas off the face of the earth. Then reducing Hamas's military capabilities. Now taking down the government or governmental role of Hamas inside of the Gaza Strip. And according to the same people, the man who is applying pressure is Donald Trump. He's also applying pressure, according to these reports, on Qatar and on the mediators to apply pressure on Hamas. So, again, from an Israeli report, so far, there was no confirmation coming from the Palestinian resistance. They're talking about Hamas accepting this deal, and they're talking about Benjamin Netanyahu's keenness to get to a deal almost at any price, because according to them, Israel is facing or is seeing an opportunity that comes only once in a generation. These are the most serious statements that we heard so far, by the way, in relation to Benjamin Netanyahu. Because Benjamin Netanyahu always stated that, we're not going to get until we eliminate the Hamas and all of that. Now, what is another indication that, well, there is a deal? There was another report in the Israeli Broadcasting Authority. Firstly, I spoke about Israel removing the ban on people returning to the areas surrounding the Gaza Strip. This is the first time that Israel has done that since the 7th of October 2023. That is another huge indication that something dramatic is about to happen. Why? Because the reality hasn't changed on the ground. The risks are still there. The resistance is not only there, but it is expanding its operations in Gaza. And as a matter of fact, they even launched missiles on those same areas that Israel allowed the people to go back to. What does that tell you? That tells you that Israel is taking steps on the ground to let the people go back to the Gaza Strip. Benjamin Netanyahu, in the meantime, is visiting these areas, and he's also making more statements. What is he saying? He went to Nir Oz, one of the areas that were hit on the 7th of October. He said, as far as we are concerned, there is an agreement. We hope to announce it soon. According to this report in the Israeli Broadcasting Authority website, Israel is expecting a positive response from Hamas tonight. Talks will then be coordinated, likely to take place in Doha. An Arab diplomat from one of the countries mediating here says, more optimistic than ever, but things still or could still go wrong. Of course, that is judging by the previous experiences and the previous hopeful signs. Mind you, Benjamin Netanyahu never sounded so sure or optimistic about this. And this could directly be linked with him going to visit Donald Trump, who probably told him, most likely, that basically don't come to the United States unless you're coming here so we can declare a deal. Because let's not forget, Donald Trump did not visit Israel a couple of months back when he went and milked the Arab states of trillions of dollars because Benjamin Netanyahu wasn't ready to declare a ceasefire. And at the time, Pete Hegseth canceled the visit to Israel, a scheduled visit, and J.D. Vance canceled the scheduled visit. Trump, from his side, he did not even visit Israel. Therefore, we are witnessing a moment now, we're seeing some developments that have more indications than ever that we are headed towards a ceasefire and a de-escalation. These were the main things that I wanted to share with you, and I'll open the space up for the community for some, to take any questions and for some participation as well. If you wanted to share your thoughts or ask anything, if you wouldn't mind highlighting it so it can be clearly visible, so I don't miss the majority of your questions. Let's have a look here. Firstly, thank you so much, everyone, for participating. Michael McIntyre, Tony, Bazzi, Palestine, and Marvin, thank you very much. Marvin, you said, change in Qatar leadership bad for Iran, Yemen, Palestine. Well, there have been, at least I haven't seen anything relating to any change in the Qatari leadership. So I'm not sure if you're mentioning anything regarding a certain figure in the establishment, because the leader of Qatar is still himself. They had a change around a decade ago where the father passed down, just over a decade ago, the father passed down, you know, the leadership of the country to his son. But apart from that, we haven't really had any declared, at least, reports. Am I optimistic? Well, it's not about being optimistic or not, but it's about reading through what's happening and contextualizing it. Based on what's happening now, there are indeed more likelihoods than before to try and reach a deal. I don't think it's, of course, related to optimism. So from my perspective, I try not to have any optimism or pessimism. I just try and be as real as possible. And judging by the latest statements and the latest developments, there's clearly something here that can happen. Certain political developments inside of Israel, international positions, the position of Trump himself, this being part of a bigger deal after the war ended with Iran, because what you hear on the news basically is nothing but the tip of the iceberg, or even a part of the tip of the iceberg, and much of it happens behind closed doors. The fact that Israel isn't militarily capable of defeating the Palestinian resistance, the fact that the Israeli military is in a crisis mode, the refusal levels are higher than ever, the economic situation is disastrous in Israel. Many of Israel's billionaires and millionaires fled the country and took all of their money out. Many international companies are no longer willing to be in Israel. Many airlines stopped going to Israel altogether. There has been a lot of damage on the country from 2 years of war for the sake of a genocidal maniac. All of these things are very important. And the more time goes by, that's the most important bit, by the way, the more time goes by, the closer we are to it ending, because it can't last forever. Therefore, the fact that we have been in this for almost 2 years, 20 months, that shows you that that's it. You know, it can't last forever. That doesn't mean the problems will stop, by the way. No, the problems will remain there. But this escalation, this war, it's going to have to end at some point. And again, Dale Senderi said Hamas wanted to end the war. Netanyahu is agreeing to that. You see, that's the thing that's not really clear, and that could be very deliberate. Why? Because from Netanyahu's perspective, even if he wants to agree to end the war and he's willing to pay the political price, or he has an answer to the political problems that may arise, he wouldn't necessarily want to be declaring it now, because that wouldn't show him in a powerful position. From the Palestinian perspective, they wouldn't have a problem in not declaring certain things in the meantime, in hope that it would reach to an ending of the war. Because the main thing from the Palestinian resistance side is to get the results, is to get the tangible results. And so far, all of this delay is primarily due to the fact that there were no relevant or adequate reassurances or guarantees to end the war. And despite the fact that the Palestinian resistance gave opportunities to the mediators and to the American side too, it didn't always work. It didn't always work, and previously we had failed situations. And the Palestinian resistance is trying to minimize that as much as possible. And Violet is this is Israel getting their prisoners before the final solution? No, Israel will not get all of their prisoners. They will get only a part of them. The Palestinian resistance will not be releasing all of them, and they will be keeping the heaviest Israeli prisoners of war up until the last second. Likewise with Israel. Israel will be keeping the what it considers, the most dangerous Palestinian prisoners up until the last second, because from the Palestinian resistance perspective, this is a card. This is a very strong card in their hands. So Israel will receive some of them in the beginning. They will receive some at a later stage during the 60-day period of ceasefire. And if there is an all-out solution afterwards, they will get all of them. That is unless all of a sudden, Benjamin Netanyahu is preparing the ground and he declares an all-out deal. And that's it. And he has this declaration from the United States and he surprises everyone. And he has the capacity to do that. And Jack Campbell, thank you, said, say it calms. How can Gaza ever go back to normal? Fairly quickly. I mean, if there would be a confirmation of an all-out deal and a total ceasefire, the plan is there. Firstly, you're going to have a period of humanitarian relief because the people have suffered for so long. There's going to be an extensive amount of aid going in. There will be 100,000 to 200,000 mobile homes going in, better tents for people to be in temporarily up until the rebuilding process begins. There might be certain areas being deliberately, temporarily, rebuilt up until the whole rebuilding process finishes. If there is a sufficient level of equipment and everything is functioning properly, there could be progress fairly quickly. And the main thing is for the genocide to stop. So if the genocide stops and the military confrontation stops, that automatically brings back an element of normality. So we saw people, for example, with personal initiatives in Gaza, setting up certain things remotely, like even to do with schooling, for example. They tried to have that even, in the middle of all of this Israeli barbarism in Gaza. So imagine that everything stops. You can quickly form certain things that would be temporary for the people to continue and, hopefully rebuild Gaza to look better than ever before. Liliana, when will the world sanction Israel? I think more and more countries are sanctioning them, but we are in a shameful world, I'm afraid, or a world led by shameful people, both in Arab countries and in Western countries and in Muslim countries too, who haven't been able to decisively stop a genocide for all of this period, saying that Israel has done damage to itself that is irreparable. Israel will not be recovering from the damage that it has done to itself. And that damage can be seen primarily in the form of the delegitimization of the country in its entirety. Firstly, you had Israel surviving on false legitimacy through scare campaigns by mainstream media, by corporate media, by politicians, by political leaders. How? Because think about it yourself. You can criticize any country on earth. You can criticize Britain, you can criticize the US, you can criticize France, you can criticize Saudi Arabia or Egypt, and any country under the sun, and that is absolutely fine up until it comes to Israel, where you automatically become an anti-Semite, an anti-Semite because you criticize a country. That's part of a process that was carefully engineered for people to not even try and speak up against Israel. Firstly, with this facade tie of this country and its leaders to Judaism, Zionism ethnicizing Judaism, linking the state and its whole existence on Jewish beliefs or what they view as Jewish beliefs, therefore somehow criminalizing the criticism of the state, because according to them, you will be criticizing, the Jewish people. That's part of the plan, of course, of Zionism. It's like saying that you can't criticize Saudi Arabia because then you would be criticizing Islam. Saudi Arabia doesn't represent Islam, nor does any other Muslim country, by the way. Like Christian European countries, they don't represent Christianity. Yes, they are countries that are Christian with a Christian majority population, but if I criticize them, that doesn't mean that I am against Christianity. And if I criticize an Arab or a Muslim country, it doesn't mean that I am against Islam, is it? But somehow when you criticize Israel, you're against Judaism. That's part of the whole campaign to criminalize and label anyone who criticizes this country. Part of a very well-calculated campaign to brainwash people and, instill fear in them, to make them shut up and, be like sheep, basically. That has been tarnished. You saw the Glastonbury Festival. You saw the chants in the Glastonbury Festival. Every Zionist now is running wild over that. Don't know why. Did they say everything that they said there? I mean, there's nothing out of the ordinary there. Global populations have been saying that for a very long time now. So the sanctioning is there, and the main sanctioning is the delegitimization. They don't have legitimacy. They don't have public legitimacy. They haven't had public legitimacy for a very long time, but now you're talking about an absolute majority of the global population. And what governments who are still tied with the Zionists are trying to do is maintain or protect whatever is left. That's why the allies of the state of Israel were very frustrated with Netanyahu, because to them, him and his government were revealing what should have been kept a secret. Their views, their supremacy, their racism, their calls for genocide, their calls to eliminate everything Palestinian, all of that should have been kept under the carpet and not made public. That's why they started to get frustrated. But now all of that is done. That's it. And Michael and the Alchemist as well, thank you. The Alchemist, you said, do you think Netanyahu used his last favor to bomb Iran, while Trump now is using this opportunity to pressure for a ceasefire in Gaza due to his standing with Gulf states? Well, look, I mean, he got the money. He got the money from the Arab states, but the leverage didn't really come from that money. The leverage came more from the realities on the ground. The realities on the ground are, first and foremost, the Palestinian resistance is unbeatable, is undefeatable. That's number one. Number two, Israel realizes that the longer this goes, the harder the blows. And this is an unintentional rhyme, by the way. The longer it goes, the harder the blows. And the blows that it got from Iran were really hard. And this last participation from the United States was there just to save face and tell Israel, shut up and get out of it. Look, we bombed it. You can claim a win. Just get out of it. Like what Biden told them when Iran attacked them back in April 2024. You got the win, take it. You defended yourself from missiles, take the win. Okay, clearly all of that is tied. Excessive force, if Gaza did have to be governed by someone other than Hamas, who would be a good candidate in your opinion? Well, it wouldn't be an individual, by the way. It would be, you can call it a technocratic government formed out of independent people who would be acceptable by the Palestinian resistance and by the Palestinian people. So the Palestinian people will not be accepting anyone working as a foreign agent or a treacherous figure, for example, from the PA led by Mahmoud Abbas in the West Bank. That's not going to happen. And the Palestinian resistance will have a say. And most importantly, the Palestinian resistance will remain there. And that's clearly now a fact. And all of the dreams of disarming and what have you will be gone. So it doesn't matter, so long as they're working for what's good for the Palestinians in Gaza, that's the main thing. However, if we're later on talking about elections, for example, or if you think what my opinion would be on any, there's a long way to get there. And of course, that would be based on what that candidate or what the political party would bring on the table in terms of a political vision, of a social vision, of an economic vision, of a development vision for the Palestinian territories, or that's assuming that there would be like a Palestinian state next to Israel, by the way, which is, quite unlikely. But let's say that happens. It would depend on what they bring on the table, and if they have a history, it would really depend on their history too. Did they have a history of struggle against oppression or a history of something else? So that would depend. But in the meantime, in the interim, the solution that we're looking for, that is expected now, is a governmental body that is there for a limited period of time to oversee the rebuilding of the Gaza Strip. And Liliana as well, Calkins, thank you very much. We super much appreciate it. And everyone else participating. Marvin Vergus, any chance that Julani will be removed? That Syria have any opposition forces trying to seize power? Is Syria under total Zio US control? Well, number one, Julani, the fact that he is now controlling Damascus does not mean that he was elected. He came through the armed opposition, right? And they took control over Syria. So for us to understand who represents who in Syria, there would need to be a free election. So that's number one. Does Syria have any opposition forces trying to seize power? They do, but they don't have enough power to take it from the current transition government. Is Syria under total Zio US control? This is where the debate, of course, starts. You have the people who will tell you this is an absolute plan, meticulously calculated in joint conspiracy by Israel, America, Turkey, and other countries too, and the man's previous experience makes him a puppet for them. Another party will tell you, no, well, he was representing the opposition, for example, and he came to power. Look, the bottom line is, what do they bring on the table? And their position with Israel would be very, very telling. So there are alarming reports recently about Syrian talks with Israel, all of these deals, prospects of them joining the Abraham Accords, and confirmations that, they're open to a relationship with Israel based on certain, conditions. What are the conditions? Who's going to dictate that? Is that something that's going to be open for referendum for the Syrian people? All of that is very important. And at the end of the day, it would be up to the Syrian people to decide. Now, Syria hasn't seen any sort of free elections. I mean, I'm not sure if they have seen free elections in their history, by the way. But so long as we don't see that, to judge who really has the popular backing, we can't really say. And if the new administration in Syria starts to take or make decisions or take steps, for example, let's say the Abraham Accords, the falsely labeled Abraham Accords, and Julani or Shara goes and has this Abraham Accords. Do the Syrian people approve of that? No. At least 95% of them don't. So the main thing is in the consequences or in the results. And now things are moving really fast. Israel is having billboards in Tel Aviv with the Syrian leader, with the Egyptian leader, with the Jordanian leader, with the Omani leader, with the Moroccan leader, with all of them, as if it's imminent that they're joining the Abraham Accords and that everything is sorted. Now let's see if they join, face the consequences. And they will be facing the consequences from their own people, by the way, before anyone else. Stephen Kelly, how many hostages left? You mean prisoners of war? They are well, after the ceasefire, recent ceasefire ended, they were 24. Israel killed at least 3. Why? Because a month ago they were saying there were 21 prisoners of war who were left, who were living, and now they're saying 20. So they might have some information that another one was killed, or they probably killed another one directly. Because don't forget, they're a liability for Israel. Israel wanted all of them dead from the beginning. Your daily inspiration, I heard Israel is potentially want to start a war with Pakistan too, as they believe they have nuclear weapons. Have you heard this? And if so, do you have any more information? Well, I haven't heard of an imminent threat to Pakistan from Israel. Look, Israel can't defeat the Palestinian resistance. A lot of what Israel is doing and saying is a little dog barking. They want to try and show themselves as if they are bigger than what they are. Of course, they have a long reach. They can carry out operations. They can assassinate. They have Air Force. They're backed by the United States. But hey, all of that, and you couldn't defeat the Palestinian resistance? Come on. And you're claiming that you want to take on Iran and Pakistan. They couldn't survive 12 days with Iran. Iran was hammering them with missile after missile. They were looking to overthrow the government in Iran, cause civil unrest. They bombed prisons with criminals, and they were threatening people in the establishment to resign, otherwise they'll get killed and their family members will get killed. A total takeover of the country and making it a proxy state. Did that work? That didn't work. The Iranian missiles were landing in the heart of the Israeli entity, and they couldn't handle it. Therefore, they had to call Daddy. Daddy, come and hit them. Daddy came and, did this act with a couple of bombs, made a few holes. All of the enriched uranium is safe. They're already rebuilding what has been damaged, repairing everything. They cut ties with the spies of the IAEA. They're moving closer to China. China's providing them more support now, more support from Russia too. What can they do with Pakistan? India couldn't survive Pakistan. Can Israel survive Pakistan? What are they thinking? They are worried about them, though. One of the previous heads of the Mossad said that his biggest nightmare is Pakistan because they have ballistic missiles. But the risk is there. Why? Because it's an expansionist colonial entity in the region run by psychopathic supremacists with a large chunk of a brainwashed population following their leaders like sheep and supporting them. And some people were threatening. They were saying, yeah, Turkey is next, or Pakistan is next, or Egypt is next. They're talking about all of that. Put it this way, Israel doesn't want any competitor. So even if you have a passive or a quiet neighbor to Israel, even with peaceful deals, like for example, Egypt, they have a peace treaty with them, but they always told the Americans, we need to have superiority over them. That's why the Egyptians started to diversify, their army, and they started to go to Russia, they started to go to China, because the Americans wouldn't sell them, for example, the F-16s with air-to-air capabilities to defeat Israel. Doesn't matter how hard they asked. Then they went to Russia, told them you can't buy them from Russia. Russia, they're under sanctions. If you buy from a country that we have sanctions on, you're in trouble. Eventually, they found a deal with China. The same deal that Iran is likely to get to. So in short, Israel doesn't want a functioning, powerful army next to it. Even if the country is in a bad economic state or if they have a good deal with them, they don't want any sort of competition in the region. When did the Palestinian resistance take more captives during last week? No. At least they did not report that they took anything. Stephen Kelly, thank you for that. I actually made another video that I was planning to publish later on about Palestine Action and its ban in Westminster. You're asking if I see it going to international courts. Well, let me talk about Palestine Action while we're at it, even if I post that video afterwards or even if I don't. Firstly, and to respond directly to the question, there wouldn't necessarily be a reason or any tangible results of it going to an international court because the United Kingdom is they went out of the EU now. They're not bound by the European human rights courts, right? That was replaced with the British Bill of Rights. International courts, the United Kingdom doesn't respect international laws anyway. They're still dealing with a genocidal entity and with a war criminal. But the ban itself is very problematic. The ban itself is very problematic because of various reasons. Number one, it's in relation to or goes back to, and that's the most dangerous part, by the way. The most dangerous part out of the ban of Palestine Action is the UK Terrorism Act of 2000. That is the most dangerous thing. That is an act that gives draconian powers to the government to label who it wants as a terrorist organization and therefore banning them without proper scrutiny, without proper study, without public debate, without any referendum, without any independent committees overseeing it. All it takes is one compromised individual sitting in the Home Office working for the Zionist lobby, and there are many of them in the United Kingdom, saying that I want to ban this man or I want to ban this group or I want to ban this organization. Now, the recent kerfuffle happened. Why? Because Palestine Action sprayed paint on a couple of planes, on a couple of fighter jets. They are a non-violent organization. They do not harm people. And their activism stems out of a struggle for the rights of people facing a genocide that the UK government participates in. Britain isn't just complicit, Britain is a participant. They created this problem. And they're still supporting this problem. The British establishment started the problem. They're still supporting the problem. They're still arming Israel. They're sending spy missions over Gaza. They're threatening the ICC chief prosecutor, or at least Pighead Cameron did when he threatened Karim Khan, told him don't dare. Does the UK have any respect for international law? They don't. And the talk about banning Palestine Action is to divert the attention. Typical. Divert the attention from the real problem. What's the real problem? Britain participating in a genocide. That's the problem. The problem is children being butchered in Gaza. That's the problem. not someone spraying paint. Keir Starmer himself defended people who did similar acts previously. Why all of a sudden everything is different? And what are the ties to all of these people of the Zionist lobby? Totally together. The claim from the government is, oh, no, they weren't acting within the law and they were not, a legitimate group. And this has no threat whatsoever for legitimate freedom of expression. Really? When there was normal freedom of expression, you were already demonizing it, though. When the protests started after the genocide began, you were demonizing them, didn't you? The previous depraved home secretaries and leaders with the Tory government at the time, they were telling the people, don't protest, didn't they? Don't protest. And this government is no similar. All of them are the same when it comes to Israel. Left, right, blue, red. The only hope Britain had was Jeremy Corbyn. And then they went and had the smear campaign against him, and we're talking about all this anti-Semitism garbage, smear campaigns 24/7 for a man, primarily because of his position, by the way, with Palestine. Because Britain couldn't tolerate an anti-Zionist leader. Media campaigns supported by the Zionists, garbage mainstream media 24/7. And now you're stuck with Keir Starmer. But thankfully, they're trying to appeal it, and they've been granted the chance to appeal. Hopefully they will be successful. And what needs to come out of it is government action, because that's only to divert the attention. The attention should be headed towards the genocide and everyone supporting the genocide. Not only by words, no, by actions. Arming them direct, that's the problem. And thank you everyone for participating. Muhammad Ihsani also said, and thank you for that, he said, why didn't the BBC once talk about the IDF, Nikki Haley signing missiles and rockets die with love, death for you, just wondering anyone. But totally. What about the direct intent of genocide? That's a very simple one. Direct statements coming from politicians, the leaders, people in the government, and no statements whatsoever. Rise up. Trump said it's not true that Palestinians are being shot at food distribution sites and that no one has been killed there. But Trump is like the spokesperson of the IDF, pathological liar. We have recordings coming day after day showing the people being literally massacred. Gulliberg, if Hezbollah had been really defeated like the Zionist claim, shouldn't the IOF be in Beirut by now? Totally. They haven't been defeated. They are conducting a strategic position now. They're having a strategic position now in Lebanon. If Israel was indeed capable of eliminating them, well, they wouldn't have stopped, would they? One of the previous Israeli demands before they withdrew from the south of Lebanon was to disarm Hezbollah. That didn't happen. They were expelled from south of Lebanon because of the Lebanese resistance and because they could not handle being in South Lebanon, even with a proxy army called the South Lebanon Army at the time, led by a man called Lahed, or called the Lahed Army at the time. because of the resistance blows. Even now, so they're in certain positions in the south. The problem is that they are conducting operations and still striking Lebanon. But again, from the Hezbollah perspective, they are not deciding to participate directly. That could be changing, but of course we will see. If they're talking about a de-escalation now, chances are there will be a solution there. What do you think on Iran, Israel? They're going back to war. There could be a going back to war, because we need to remember the ceasefire was a unilateral ceasefire, by the way. Israel declared the ceasefire, not Iran. Iran said, if you stop shooting, we stop shooting. We stop responding. And why did Israel declare a ceasefire? Because they couldn't handle more of the Iranian strikes. But if there would be a de-escalation path, that means that it's less likely for there to be an escalation with Iran. However, the chances will always be there for another escalation with them. Because again, so long as Israel is there, they will be looking to dismantle anything that even has a remote challenge to them. TM, do you think countries like Qatar would allow the US to use their airspace and bases in a potential war with Iran? Would they even, would they even if have a choice? They have a choice. It's their country. The fact that there's a United States base there, they would have some sort of agreements with them. There hasn't been any evidence that the United States attacked Iran from that base in Qatar, but Iran decided to attack that base because it's the largest within the Gulf states. I think the only one larger than that base close by is in Turkey. And of course, it was coordinated, by the way. They told the Qataris that they're going to attack. So, and of course, the Americans then knew, and they removed, they were removing the people already before. But the existence of these bases depends to a very large extent on the leadership of the country, the leadership of that country. Because if they do not want them to be there, well, they need to get out. So it's a little bit misleading to say that, like, the United States is the only party. No. Some of the Arab leaders are, well, they're clearly fine with that, or they want that. So, of course, if you want to go back to it, we can go back to the fact that, their existence has been there because of, the previous British Empire and the deals that they had with their ancestors too. Gullyberg Mahmoud, have there been any locations out of Israel close to the public after the Iranian missiles? The ones close to the public, some of them weren't open to the public anyway. Like if you want to talk about the Haifa oil refinery, only workers were allowed to go there. The areas that have been hit hard would be closed areas. Israel reported that approximately 10,000 people have been left without a home, and they had, alternative housing. So those areas, especially an area called Bat Yam, by the way, and some areas in Tel Aviv and Ramat Gan that have to be rebuilt, so some people can't go there. The places that they destroyed would be closed or had severe damage just because of the risk there. And that's about it. So these areas that were really hardly hit. Of course, the Iranians said that they targeted certain locations that were used by the Israeli military and intelligence that were within the civilian locations. I mean, so the Israeli Kiryat is in the middle of Tel Aviv, next to residential buildings. That's the command and control area of the Israeli political leadership, the IDF, the Israeli intelligence, the military intelligence, the naval head bases. All of that is within that area. They targeted them. So all of those areas that have had a level of damage that makes it unsafe for people to be in. And of course, Israel wanted to cut a long story short by, asking the Americans to conduct this operation on Fordo and tell you, that's it, done deal. We hit Iran. They're never going to get back up. And to this day, you have Israeli mainstream media talking about, the fact that Iran is destroyed, and, even the supreme leader is going to die soon, and all that. Marvin, any chance Mount Hermon Golan Heights go back to Syria with Julani in control? We don't know the details of the deal. Some people are saying that they will hand Al-Julan to Israel. Others are saying that there won't be an all-out deal unless the Golan Heights go back to Syria. So far, Israel is occupying additional parts of Syria. The previous rulers of Syria, they refused to have any deal with Israel without the Golan Heights, but there was an agreement from the 70s to reduce tensions on that border that were respected for over half a century. So all of that would really depend. I mean, Israel typically does not give back any sort of territories unless they are met with force. And that wouldn't be the case. Because the new Syrian rulers, they don't tell you that they're looking for any sort of, escalation with Israel. V, you think Netanyahu will win the next election? If the Israel left wins, do you think they'll give some peace to Palestinians? Thank you, Mahmoud. You're welcome. Based on the recent polls, Benjamin Netanyahu and his traditional partners would get anywhere between 49 to 51 mandates, which is 10 to 12 short of forming a government in Israel. And I'm telling you, a very, very tight government with a very, very minimal, just breaking the barrier, basically, which would be yet another fragile government that would have its whole fate tied on one person. This is a very unstable government, but this is what Benjamin Netanyahu has done for a very long time. He has a chance if he would be able to have a deal with one of the leading current opposition parties somehow. It's not impossible. Some of them are willing to give him a safety net. Some of them were partners with him before. And some of them, despite the fact that they said that they would never have a coalition with him, they ended up having a coalition with him. Under their excuses, saving Israel, we don't want pressure, we don't want this, we don't want that. There is a prospect of him managing, trying to form a coalition, but the scales are tipping more on the opposition side. And when we want to talk about the Israeli left, I mean, Israeli left or Zionist left is something that's important to talk about. Like left Zionist. Left Zionist what exactly? You're willing to have a supremacist entity on part of the land, but not the other part of the land. The only time that there was any hope in Israel of reaching a peace under the assassinated, the only man who wanted to get peace, actually, was assassinated, by the way, wouldn't even give the Palestinians a state with 100% sovereignty. I mean, there were talks that it might lead there, but many people were skeptical. So talking about the Zionist left, or the fact that, you know, you have settlers and non-settlers and that, it's a little bit misleading. The sane voices in Israel are a very, very small minority. There are sane voices. Many of the sane voices of Israel left Israel because they could no longer tolerate living there. The ones who remain there, they're almost a hopeless case within the country. Why? Because the foundation of the country itself was based on supremacy, on racism, on apartheid, on ethnic cleansing, on mass killing, on viewing people as, you know, type A and then type B. And so there is no hope. There is no hope, unfortunately, with a country run by Zionism. The only all-out solution would be equality, equal rights between the Jordan River to the sea. Otherwise, there will always be problems, even if there would be a Palestinian state, by the way, which is, again, something that consecutive Israeli governments refused. And thank you, everyone, for your participation. Ultra, is China serious with backing militarily Iran and protecting itself as a world power? Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think the fact that China doesn't talk too much or act like a neighborhood bully like the United States doesn't mean that it's in any way, shape, or form less capable. During the intense period of exchange of blows between Iran and Israel, Iranian oil exports to China reached record levels, 1.83 million barrels a day for 10 consecutive days. And then you had the delusional and arrogant Donald Trump saying, oh, China, you can buy oil again from Iran, as if they stopped. They were still selling every single day. Everything was going fine. China was and still is the biggest consumer of Iranian oil. They'll continue to do that. And they will protect that. And they know that the United States has an interest in choking them by controlling Iran and instilling a puppet regime. They were hoping to bring back the son of the Shah to Iran. Unfortunately for him, it didn't work. And then he unfollowed Trump on X. And I think Benjamin Netanyahu too, he was really sad. Poor thing. And we'll wrap it up there, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in for another live stream, for everyone participating in the chat too. Apologies if I missed some of your comments, but I do appreciate your input. Thank you for everyone who sent supers. Much appreciated. Muhammad, Ihsan Rabbani, Liliana, Calkins, The Alchemist, Michael, Jack, Marvin, Palestine, Tony, and Michael again. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. As usual, enjoyed the live stream with you and the Q&A session too. I'll hopefully have a couple of segments for you as well. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of your evening, day, or night, depending on where you are. Stay blessed, take care, and I will see you soon in the next video. Peace, everyone. Salam.